Okay, we're gonna pick it up today from where we left off with on last session. The Ramah over here comes along and says that the chazan needs to fulfill the obligation of other people, and therefore, if he dislikes someone seriously, there's going to be a major problem. However, the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah actually goes into this a little bit more. It says that this is not so simple at all. There it is. Because nowadays, the Rosh Hashana, they quote, explains that we don't we all know how to read, we all know how to daven, most of us. So we don't need a chazan to fulfill our obligation unless it's maybe certain parts of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Musaf, Yom Kippur, maybe Rosh Hashanah, Musaf. So that requires more research. The custom is someone who blows the shofar or daven as chazan. Even one time, you don't give the mitzvah to someone else over here. Source of this is Shal Shuv Shelas Yabitz, Chelik Beisim and Samach Tes. And there are three reasons for this. Number one, Darchei Shalom, peace. Number two, Chashad, suspicion. People are going to suspect the fellow for up to nothing good. Number three, Malin Bekodesh. You go up in holiness. In other words, once you elevate someone to already a higher position, so then you leave it there. You don't demote him. So this comes to anything that's an appointed official position. However, if it wasn't stipulated like this originally, that it was gonna be a set term or something, if there's other reasons that warrant his demotion, so then demoting him, so then for sure that would be done. Anyways, so this is the idea over here. Now, there's a few other points that we should point out before we start the next sift. One of them is the person who does slichos in the morning. We tell him you should also be chazan for shachris and mincha. Why? Sha'amaschel b'mitzvah oimrim lo gemor. Someone who begins a mitzvah, we tell him, we tell him to finish the mitzvah. That's the idea. This is where this comes from. Now, according to this, the chazan who davens, who begins a mitzvah, he doesn't daven marv. Hold on. And the idea over here is that someone who begins a mitzvah, we tell him to finish the mitzvah, finish what you started. So this is an important principle and an important idea. So the real question on this halacha is that's only if it's one mitzvah, but really davening mincha is a separate mitzvah. Even shachris, like you could look into that. So that's an interesting question that they ask basically in this footnote over here. And there's certainly what to look into over there. It's obviously wouldn't apply Marv the night before. That
Should you
would
say
apply.
should you say slichos the same? Do you have to say slichos the same place you daven?
No.
Right.
So this is then they say at the end, a lot of these halachas overlap the halachas of Simin and Gimel about being a chazan. Just wanna go through over here some of the highlights from the Piskei Tshuva that he says that we didn't cover, and then we could move on to the next sif over here. We're gonna start with Ozion. You know, you want to go after a good chazan. So he just says this also applies to the Balthakeh, the person who's gonna blow shofar. Make sure he's proper, make sure he's good. And that's basically the idea over here. So you should be stringent on the importance of having a someone good who's gonna blow the shofar. In this small little section over here, they talk about how a paid chazan could be better than someone that's free. He'll take the job more seriously. Over here, it talks about the importance of someone being married,
That's with any. That's with, I mean, that's a claw, right? That's with anything.
about being paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Good. There's what to discuss more on that topic, but yeah. He's
Mhm.
talking about someone who's married. Someone being married is halachically more important than someone being 30, in regards to being chazan. Someone who is married and then lost his wife, the chatchila shouldn't even be chazan unless he's remarried again. But
Hmm.
if he was already appointed as chazan and he had a lot of years, keep him. Don't reject him.
Does it matter how old he is? If he how old he is when he loses his wife? If it's if
No,
he's
no.
I mean, so let's say a 70-year-old who loses his wife, or a 30-year-old who loses his wife
Well,
who
that's
doesn't.
what this line is saying. So
Yeah.
again, someone who is married
Yeah.
and then lost his wife, right? Someone's married and he lost his wife.
Yeah.
You don't appoint another chazan. Lechatchila, preferably, you don't appoint him as chazan, preferably. However, if he was already appointed and already had the position for many years, you don't push him off. Certainly, if he was already appointed before he became a widower and lost his wife, you shouldn't push him off. So, in other words, there's a distinction between if he was married beforehand and then had the position, he would keep it, right? But if he wasn't appointed yet at the position, and now he's already considered a bachelor, so to say, he's a bacher, he's not married anymore. So
But no
then you
one
shouldn't
people
appoint him. So that's the
people
difference.
no one considers an 80-year-old a bachelor, right?
Halachically, he would be considered one,
Yeah.
right? If it would be the first time getting this position. So that would be the distinction in this halacha. The Mata Ephraim discusses this. So that's the difference between the two. Now, someone who separated with his wife because of a fight that they had, he should not be appointed chazan during Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. When you have two potential chazanim, one of them, they both are good with, they both have Torah, they learned a lot, they know a lot of Torah, they both fear heaven. But one of them has a good voice, but he's got problem with the family. Second one doesn't have a good voice, but he's got a good family. Guess what?
The one with a good voice.
The one with a good voice, yeah. So you actually see that a good voice is important, but as we learned last session, it's certainly not the most important thing. The most important thing is that he has Torah and good actions there. Those are basically some of the main points on Sif Aleph. Any other questions, comments on Sif Aleph?
Yeah.
Relatively straightforward. We go into Ataris Nadarim a little bit. With the Shari Tshuva quoted over here. Ataris Nadarim on Erev Rosh Hashana. Doesn't really have to do with our Sif though. Okay, so that's Sif Aleph. Someone just put it up.